Michael Renner had been home for exactly 6 days. 6 days of quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, and trying to remember how to exist without war thumping in his chest. His uniform was still pressed from the ceremony, the one where they pinned a third star on his collar and called him Hero. He wore it now, not for vanity, but because it made him feel anchored, like he still had purpose. He was driving back from the VA clinic, just a routine checkup. He'd taken a side street through his own neighborhood, waving politely at the kids playing basketball and the old woman who always overwatered her roses. That's when the flashing lights filled his rearview mirror. Michael pulled over, engine off, hands on the wheel. The officer approached slowly, with a swagger too casual to be professional. "You lost, soldier," the cop sneered, eyes trailing over Michael's uniform like it was a costume. "Or is Halloween coming early this year?" Michael didn't answer. Officer Travis Harlan. The name was etched on his badge, but it might as well have been burned into the moment. Harlan leaned in, scowling. "Step out of the vehicle, now." Still silent, Michael complied. He moved with the slow, deliberate grace the Army had drilled into him. No sudden movements, no raised voice, no challenge. It didn't matter. Harlan circled him like prey. "You expect me to believe you're a general? Driving a beat-up Ford with out-of-state plates?" "Yeah, right." Michael's lips twitched, but not into a smile. More like restraint. Neighbors peeked out from porches. One woman held her phone up, recording from behind a hedge. Another ushered her child inside. The street was watching, but no one spoke. "ID," Harlan barked. Michael handed over his military credentials, along with his license. Harlan glanced at them, then tossed them onto the hood with a scoff. "Fake as hell. You think you can walk around impersonating military personnel? You think wearing that uniform makes you untouchable?" He didn't wait for an answer. The cuffs came out fast. Michael said only one word as the cold steel locked around his wrists. "Careful." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't defiance. It was the voice of a man who'd seen war, who knew exactly how fast systems collapse when arrogance takes the wheel. But Harlan just laughed. "What are you gonna do, soldier? Call in backup?" The slam of the squad car door echoed down the street. Michael sat in the back seat, back straight, hands cuffed behind him, eyes steady through the glass. He didn't shout, didn't plead, didn't resist. He just stared straight ahead, past the rearview mirror, past the smirking officer, past the flashing lights. Because Michael Renner had fought enemies in deserts and jungles. He'd lost men in foreign lands. But this was personal. This was home. And somewhere deep inside, as the cruiser rolled toward the station, a single, silent decision began to form. He would make one call, and everything would change. The squad car rolled into the precinct just past noon, sunlight flickering off the tinted windows as if even the day itself didn't want to see what was happening. Officer Harlan walked Michael inside with smug satisfaction, a bounce in his step like he'd just bagged a trophy. Michael said nothing. His wrists throbbed from the cuffs, but he didn't flinch. The front desk officer barely looked up until her eyes caught the uniform, and then lingered, confused. But Harlan muttered something under his breath, and she nodded him through. Inside the holding area, the humiliation didn't end. Harlan shoved Michael against a fingerprinting machine, smirking as he pressed his fingers down harder than necessary. "You know, for a fake general, you're surprisingly calm. That's got to be part of the act, huh?" Still nothing from Michael. Just the sound of the machine beeping and the quiet scribble of a pen. "Sit," Harlan ordered, pushing a chair toward a bare desk. Michael sat. "You get one call," Harlan said. Use it to phone your tailor. Tell him the costume's not holding up. Michael's gaze drifted to the corner of the room. A small plaque hung crookedly on the wall. Honor, service, integrity. He stared at it for a long moment, then finally picked up the phone. He dialed a number. 11 digits. No hesitation. "Renner," he said. "Just one word." A pause. Then, "Yes, sir. I understand." He hung up. "Was that your mom?" Harlan mocked. "She gonna come down and knit you out of this one?" Michael didn't answer. He just folded his hands and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 5 more. And then everything changed. It started with the phone ringing at the front desk. A soft buzz, followed by a strange hush. Then a second phone rang, this one deeper inside the building. Footsteps. A door opening. Chief Donna Rowe walked in, shoulders squared, eyes sharp. She didn't speak to anyone. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on Michael, still seated, still silent. Her face changed. It wasn't panic. It was recognition. And then something close to fear. She turned to Harlan. "You arrested him?" Harlan leaned back, arms crossed. "Guy was impersonating a federal officer. I checked his credentials. Looked fake as hell." Rowe's voice was ice. "That's Major General Michael Renner, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor. 4 deployments. Pentagon liaison to the Joint Chiefs." Silence fell. "You put cuffs on him?" she asked. "He was wearing—" She cut him off. "Release him. Now." Harlan blinked, confused. "But now, officer, before this becomes a federal matter, which, frankly, it already is." Michael stood slowly. The cuffs came off. He rubbed his wrists, nodding once at the chief. "General Renner," she said carefully, "I deeply apologize." He raised a hand. "Don't." She hesitated, then said, "If there's anything we can do to—" "There is," he said. "You can remember this moment." She swallowed hard. Understood. As Michael walked out, past the stunned officers, past the fading humiliation, something colder had taken root in his expression. Not anger, resolve. This wasn't about the cuffs anymore, or the insult. It was about the rot that let it happen. The silent permission men like Harlan thought they had. Outside, the sky had darkened. A storm was building. Michael stepped into it willingly. Because this wasn't over. It was only beginning. Michael drove home in silence, the buzz of the precinct still clinging to his skin like smoke. The cuffs had left deep, angry rings around his wrists, red, almost purple, bruises that pulsed with more than just pain. Inside the house, his son was on the couch, knees pulled to his chest, eyes locked on the television. When Michael entered, the boy didn't speak, just stared at the news report looping quietly on screen. Footage from the station, blurred faces and flashing lights. One still image, grainy but unmistakable, of Michael in uniform, hands cuffed behind his back. "Dad," his son whispered. "Why?" Michael sat beside him slowly. The ache in his joints had nothing to do with age. "Do they treat all soldiers like criminals now?" the boy asked. Michael didn't answer right away. What could he say? That the world didn't care about medals? That a uniform was just cloth in the wrong zip code? "No," he said finally, "but some of them see what they want to see." His son looked down. "You didn't do anything." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know." The boy didn't cry. He was too used to silence. Michael had raised him with dignity and discipline, with order instead of chaos. But now he saw the confusion behind his son's eyes, and the slow, spreading shame that didn't belong there. After the boy went to bed, Michael stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The bruises stared back at him like shadows from another battlefield. He'd once led troops through sandstorms, insurgent traps, and suicide bombers. He'd written tactical manuals, shaped policy, but nothing in the military taught him how to unlearn humiliation. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph, his unit in Kandahar, all smiling, all gone now. He had survived everything. And still, one man with a badge had stripped him of more than he ever lost to war. But this wasn't revenge. Not yet. He thought back to the chief's eyes when she realized who he was, how quickly fear replaced authority, how fast systems moved when power picked up the phone. He was done being silent. Michael returned to the living room and sat at the desk in the corner. He opened his laptop, logged into a secure portal from his Pentagon days, and started typing. Old protocols, contacts. Access still lived in the right hands. He wasn't planning a mission. He was starting a war. Not with guns, not with fists, but with truth. And it would begin with information. He looked at the clock. It was late, but he didn't sleep anymore anyway. Not since the IED that ripped through his convoy and left more than scars behind. There were enemies overseas, and there were enemies at home. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Yeah," the voice on the other end said. "Been a long time, Renner." Michael didn't hesitate. "I need surveillance." The voice on the other end of the line belonged to Jerome Ghost Barnes, former Army intel, now operating in a legal gray zone that made him more valuable than most sitting agents. Michael hadn't spoken to him in 7 years. "You sure you want to dig into this?" Jerome asked. "It's just one cop." "No," Michael said. "It never is." By morning, a folder appeared in a secure drop box, thin at first, then slowly thickening with every hour. Jerome worked quietly, efficiently, like a man who'd never stopped serving, just changed uniforms. The deeper Michael looked, the darker it got. Officer Travis Harlan had been with the precinct for 8 years. On paper, his record was clean. Too clean. But Jerome had access to more than paper. He had back doors and buried files, whispers of misconduct, redacted reports, and one chilling pattern: the names of citizens, always black or brown, who'd filed complaints. Most were dismissed. A few vanished entirely. One name froze Michael's breath. Isaiah Collins, age 17. Missing. Case closed as a runaway. The file was sealed. But Jerome found what wasn't meant to be found. A body cam timestamp, 1 minute of static, and then sudden silence, on the night Isaiah disappeared. The last known person to see him alive? Officer Travis Harlan. Michael scrolled through the rest of the findings. Excessive force reports altered before submission. Body cam footage marked inoperable, and written statements suspiciously similar across different incidents. The kind of patterns only visible when someone actually looked, and no one had. This wasn't just racism. This was routine, systemic, strategic, and protected. Michael sat back in his chair, heart pounding beneath the quiet rage blooming in his chest. It wasn't just about what had happened to him anymore. That bruise on his wrist, his son's question, was only the trigger. The real target was the disease hiding in plain sight. He forwarded a copy of the files to an encrypted drive, then opened a new document. He began building a case, not for court, not yet, but for leverage, for exposure. Because men like Travis didn't just get lucky. They were shielded by someone higher. Michael picked up his phone again. Same number, same voice. "What now?" Jerome asked. "I need you to go deeper," Michael said. "Find out who's protecting him." A pause. "All right," Jerome said, "but if we hit something big—" "We won't stop," Michael finished. The call ended. Michael stared at the drive, then at the door. Outside, the storm had broken, but the real thunder was still coming. The address was in the hollowed-out south end of the city, where sirens replaced birdsong and cracked sidewalks, whispered stories no one wanted to hear. Michael parked across the street and stared at the house, peeling paint, sagging porch, curtains drawn like a wound too tender to show. Delilah Kane hadn't returned his messages, but Michael wasn't leaving without answers. He knocked. Nothing. He knocked again. 3 slow raps that said, "This matters." The door creaked open 2 inches. "I don't talk to uniforms," came a voice. "I'm not a cop," Michael said. "I'm a father." A long pause. Then the door opened wider. Delilah Kane looked older than her 47 years. Grief had carved lines into her face that no makeup could soften. She wore a faded T-shirt with her son's name printed on it, Isaiah. Her eyes caught the ribbons on Michael's chest. The faint shine of respect flickered through her suspicion. "You were the soldier," she said, "at the memorial. You stood up when no one else did." Michael nodded. "You're the only one who ever looked me in the eye." She stepped back and let him in. The house was quiet, too quiet. Photos lined the hallway. Isaiah as a baby, on a bike, in a school uniform. Then nothing. The space after his disappearance was a wall of empty frames. "I tried everything," Delilah said. "The city said he ran away, but I know my son. He was scared of the dark. He never even stayed out past 10. Michael listened. "Lawyers stopped returning my calls," she continued. "One of them finally told me straight. You can't win against blue." Michael pulled a file from his coat. This wasn't a mistake. It was covered up. Delilah took the folder with shaking hands. Her eyes widened as she read the names, the redacted memos, the time-stamped footage. This is real?" she whispered. Michael nodded. "I think Travis Harlan was the last person to see Isaiah alive." Her breath hitched. "I'm not here to promise justice," Michael said. "I'm here to find truth, and I need your help." Delilah looked up at him. The sorrow was still there, but something else had returned. A spark. "I'll help," she said, "but you need to understand. If you go after them, they'll come for you." Michael's voice was steady. "Let them." Michael sat alone in the dimly lit bar, the air thick with cigarette smoke and cheap whiskey. He glanced at the door every few minutes, waiting. The weight of the folder in his coat felt heavier than before. This was no longer about bruises or broken pride. This was about uncovering the truth buried beneath lies. Travis Harlan arrived with his usual swagger, a half-smile tugging at his lips. He didn't recognize the shift in Michael's posture, a predator moving carefully through the shadows. "Never thought I'd see you here, General," Travis sneered, sliding into the booth across from him. Michael returned the smile, slow and deliberate. "Funny how things work out." The bartender placed 2 drinks on the table, and Travis took a long pull, eyes gleaming with false bravado. They talked, Michael asking questions layered beneath casual words, baiting Travis with stories of loyalty, brotherhood, and the real world behind the badge. Travis leaned in, lowering his voice. "You want to know how we keep things quiet? How easy it is to make someone disappear without a trace?" Michael nodded, feigning interest. "It's all about control, power. You break them down, make them afraid, and then, poof, they're gone. No one asks questions, no one cares." Michael's hand inched toward his jacket pocket, the small recorder alive with every damning word. Travis laughed, oblivious to the trap. "Most of these kids? They're already lost. Easy targets. And the department? They cover our backs. Always." The confession was worse than Michael imagined. a calculated system of abuse, silence, and fear wrapped in loyalty. When Travis finally left, swagger diminished, but ego intact. Michael stayed, replaying the recording over and over. It was enough to shatter reputations, to shake the precinct. But it wasn't enough to topple the fortress protecting men like Harlan. Michael knew the real battle lay ahead. He had the voice, the proof, but not yet the power. As the bar's neon lights flickered outside, Michael dialed Jerome's number. "We have what we need," he said. "Now it's time to make them listen." The night the recording went public, the city ignited. Michael never revealed his identity as the source. He watched from the shadows as news outlets scrambled to verify the wiretap. Travis Harlan's voice, raw and unapologetic, echoing across every screen. Protesters gathered outside the precinct the very next day, thousands strong. Chants filled the air, demanding justice for Isaiah and every victim silenced before him. Signs waved high, faces painted with grief and rage. Inside, the police union spun into overdrive, rushing to shield Travis. Lawyers whispered promises of loyalty, hoping to contain the damage. But the flood was unstoppable. Internal affairs reopened cold cases overnight. Community leaders held emergency meetings. City officials couldn't ignore the storm bearing down. Travis tried to maintain his arrogance, but cracks showed fast. His calls went unanswered. Colleagues averted their eyes. The facade of protection shattered piece by piece. One crisp morning, Michael saw the news. Travis Harlan was arrested, charged with obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and more. The headline screamed, "Fall of a Cop," but the city already knew the deeper story. Michael stood outside, unseen, heart heavy but steady. This wasn't about glory, not medals or recognition. It was about a promise he'd made long ago, the vow to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. He thought about his son, waiting at home. About Delilah Kane, finally given a voice. He was no longer the decorated general or the silent warrior. Tonight, he was simply a father who kept his word. As the crowd's chants swelled and cameras flashed, Michael slipped away down a side street. The war wasn't over, but the first battle had been won, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself a breath. Because sometimes true power was measured not in rank or weapons, but in standing up when it mattered most. The cemetery was quiet, except for the whispering wind weaving through tall oaks. Michael stood before a modest headstone, simple, yet etched with a name that echoed through every choice he'd ever made. Laura Renner. His fingers traced the cold marble as memories swirled in the chilled air. Laura had died 2 years before, thousands of miles away. A roadside bomb, a war zone far from home. Michael had been deployed, fighting battles with weapons and orders, but the fight that haunted him most was the one he left behind. The war he never won against time, grief, and guilt. He knelt, voice low but steady. "Laura." "I did what I could." His throat tightened, the weight of years pressing down. "I fought the war here, this time," he whispered. The war that didn't come with medals or parades. The one where justice was a whispered secret, and silence was a weapon used against the powerless. His eyes scanned the graves surrounding hers, reminders of lives lost, battles fought, and promises broken. A soft shuffle behind him. He turned to see his son, Caleb, clutching a neatly folded army uniform, the one Michael had worn when he was arrested, the one that had once symbolized pride, now heavy with pain and hope. Caleb's eyes searched his father's face. "Will you teach me to wear it?" Michael smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. The uniform never came off, Caleb. Not really. He rose, hand steady despite the ache in his bones, and took the folded fabric. "This isn't just cloth," he said. "It's a legacy of honor, sacrifice, and the courage to stand when others fall." Caleb's fingers brushed the patches and ribbons, eyes wide with a mix of wonder and fear. "Promise me," Michael said. "Promise you'll fight the right battles." The boy nodded solemnly. Michael looked back at Laura's grave one last time. "I'm coming home," he said softly. Not just from war, but from the darkness that had shadowed his soul. As father and son walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long golden rays over the cemetery. The fight wasn't over. It never would be. But a new chapter had begun, one where justice, love, and truth would carry the day, where the uniform wasn't just a symbol of duty, but of enduring hope. And somewhere deep inside, Michael knew that was the greatest victory of all.